Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really wild historical parallel. We're going to look at exactly why the armored knight, a military unit that for centuries was considered basically invincible, was rendered completely obsolete by gunpowder. And more importantly, we're going to explore how that historical echo perfectly mirrors the absolute existential crisis facing the modern main battle tank today. To kick things off, there's a brilliant quote by R. Buckminster Fuller that I think absolutely nails the concept of asymmetric warfare. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And that's exactly it, right? You don't beat a heavily armored knight by just forging a slightly sharper sword. No, you completely change the game. You bring gunpowder to the battlefield. So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The death of the knight. 2. Lifespans of weapon systems. 3. The rise of ATGMs. 4. The fatal exchange ratio. And 5. The future of armor. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the death of the knight and the rise of gunpowder infantry. Think about it. Why exactly did early, primitive gunpowder completely wreck these deeply entrenched, practically untouchable aristocratic armies? Well, it all came down to a massive economic and training disparity. Picture this. On one side, you have the aristocratic knight, incredibly expensive to armor, requiring literally a lifetime of elite training, and fielded in very small numbers. On the other side, you have peasant infantry utilizing basic fortified wagons and crude firearms. The training required to point and shoot an early musket was practically zero. So suddenly, heavy cavalry simply couldn't outmaneuver or survive this new, incredibly cheap gunpowder-wielding infantry. It was a total paradigm shift. And honestly, the situation for the knight only got worse as firearms evolved. We started with the early clunky matchlock, moved to the slightly more complex wheel lock, and eventually hit the highly reliable flintlock. With every single technological leap, that increasing reliability made minimally trained, lightly armored soldiers drastically more lethal than the absolute best elite knights. Gunpowder didn't just defeat the knight on a given Tuesday. It made the entire concept of the heavily armored knight completely obsolete forever. Which brings us to Section 2, lifespans of weapon systems and the inevitable obsolescence of military behemoths. So, the fundamental historical truth here is that every single weapon system has a finite lifespan. Take the war elephant. For millennia, it was the ancient world's tank, providing unmatched shock and awe on the battlefield. But their military dominance ended abruptly around 1526 when early cannons simply terrified them and caused them to run amok. Or look at horse cavalry, an absolute military institution for thousands of years. But it practically vanished from the battlefield in just 20 years because of barbed wire and machine guns. Even the mighty, seemingly invincible iron battleship lasted roughly 100 years before air power made it a floating target. The lesson: untouchable systems always eventually meet their match. Let's move to Section 3, the rise of ATGMs, the gunpowder of the modern era. This historical echo brings us directly to today, where the modern steel knight, the main battle tank, is meeting its very own gunpowder equivalent. Enter the anti-tank guided missile, or ATGM. Much like those early firearms evolved from crude dubs to flintlocks, ATGMs have rapidly advanced from clunky manual line-of-sight systems into highly sophisticated fire-and-forget weapons. Today, we're talking about systems equipped with dual-band seekers and artificial intelligence, capable of absolutely devastating armor penetration. To defeat modern tank defenses, sophisticated weapons like the American Javelin or the Swedish Bill use tandem charge warheads and top attack flight profiles. It works in 3 incredibly fast, devastating steps. Step 1, the missile arcs up and strikes the vehicle from above, specifically targeting the roof, where tank armor is traditionally the thinnest. Step 2, a small initial charge detonates just to trigger and defeat the tank's outer explosive reactive armor. And then, Step 3, the main charge easily punches right through the main hull. Game over. Just like our knight versus peasant comparison earlier, today we have a massive, multi-million-dollar mechanized tank facing off against a highly lethal, minimally trained infantry operator. Staging and moving these massive armored forces under the pervasive 24/7 observation of modern drones is becoming incredibly dangerous. Meanwhile, training an infantryman to use sophisticated weapons like the Enlaw takes just 4 days. For the Javelin, it's a mere day and a half. With less than a week of training, a single operator can achieve 100% penetration probability on a direct hit against the world's most heavily armored, expensive tanks.
That math leads us perfectly into Section 4, the fatal exchange ratio, and why the economics of modern warfare are fundamentally unsustainable.
$10 million. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the estimated cost of just one single, fully fitted, modern Western main battle tank. It is a staggering investment of national resources, time, and engineering. But here is where the economic math becomes wildly lopsided. You have a $10 million tank staring down a Javelin missile system that costs about $178,000 for the first shot and just $78,000 for every missile after that. The N-Law is even cheaper, sitting at around $40,000. So why does this matter so much? Because even the richest, most powerful superpower on Earth simply cannot economically sustain a long war when their $10 million assets are being consistently and reliably destroyed by $40,000 shoulder-fired missiles. The exchange ratio is just fatal. And despite frantic, almost desperate attempts by militaries to adapt on the fly, the heavy armor approach is failing. We've all seen the images of makeshift metal cages, sometimes called slat armor or cope cages, welded to the roofs of vehicles to try and defend against these top-attack munitions. But here's the reality. Frontline operators explicitly report that these makeshift defenses are totally ineffective against modern ATGMs. Simply put, no existing tank can withstand a direct modern top attack, period.
Finally, Section 5, the future of armor, and how militaries have to evolve beyond the steel behemoth. So where do we go from here? What does this mean for the future of mechanized armies? Well, to avoid absolute obsolescence, sources emphasize that militaries really have to ditch this maneuver-centric nostalgia and face the cold, hard modern realities. We have to stop just trying to make tanks heavier by slapping thicker steel onto them. It's not working. Instead, future platforms have to be lighter, they have to be faster, and critically airliftable. They need to transition away from thick metal and rely heavily on electronic stealth and active protection systems. We're talking about a digital shield rather than just a physical one. I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to chew on. If the armor branch is currently on a death ride of its own making, very much like the horse cavalry of the 1920s, will modern armies actually adapt in time? Or are they going to stubbornly hold on to their $10 million steel knights until it's simply too late? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep questioning the models around you, and we'll catch you next time.